everyone, and welcome. It's really exciting to be here with you tonight, and it's looking so fancy and glamorous because I have a wonderful technical husband who loves to play with all of this sort of stuff. So I have a phoenix behind me, and I'm looking very fancy, and you've got all of the numbers and things on the screen. If you've got any questions as we're talking today, and you want to pop them in anonymously, you can WhatsApp them to the number on the screen. Otherwise, you can pop them into the chat and Tim will let me know at a slightly later stage. There might be people arriving during the call as well, because apparently there have been some Wi-Fi issues and some technical issues with people. So I'm going to start. So this is Phoenix Rising. And the reason I put this together, and there's been such an interest in this work, is because there is a gap in a woman's life when she moves into menopause and she moves into the space of creativity and energy in her body that is very different from what has come before. And I've found in my own story and in my own life, I discovered the gap for myself and then went, oh, okay. So this is also called Trial by Fire and rising from the ashes of our hot flashes, because menopause is not fun. So I want to tell a little bit of my story as to why I found this particular path with surgical menopause. Last year, I had an emergency visit to the hospital. I thought I had appendicitis. I didn't. I went through, I think it was 3 or 4 nights of actually being in hospital, and they didn't know what was wrong. They thought I had a ectopic pregnancy. Then they thought I had not a cremated pregnancy, it's called something else, a stone pregnancy or something, but it wasn't that. And then they eventually found out I had something called a womb torsion, and I was going to need to have a hysterectomy. The doctor, when I went and spoke to him, suggested that they just whip it all out because, you know, it's easy and it will be fine, and it's a major surgery, but it's not a big deal. He does it every day. Everyone has great results, blah, blah, blah. So I went in and booked in for my surgery to undergo this major surgery, which is very downplayed by a lot of people, and went immediately into surgical menopause. I struggled to come back from the surgery. I was put in high care. I had a lot of very interesting experiences with the drugs that they gave me in high care with my lungs, but then I came back into the world and thought, oh, 2 weeks and I'll be back online and I'll be back working and everything will be fine, because everyone I've spoken to about this operation says, oh, no, they got over it so quickly. And then I thought something was wrong with me, because I came home and my skin was on fire. It went very thin. I got this horrible rash that had little blisters all over myself that were popping. And I went immediately into having 7 to 12 hot flashes an hour. I felt like I was on fire, and thinking, can this be normal? And then I went online and found out about other people's experiences, and they were talking about HRT and taking HRT. And Tim had my HRT prescription. The doctor had given it to me at the last minute. He'd said, oh, by the way, you might need some estrogen. So here's a prescription. You can take this and you can just sort of find out what works for you. You can take 1 pill every 2 days or every 3 days. And I'd just come out of surgery, so I wasn't really completely au fait with listening to what had happened. And every time the nurse was speaking to me, she was just saying, remember, you can't have sex, you know, sort of like very embarrassedly, you can't have sex for 6 to 8 weeks. And that's basically what I was left with at the end of this operation. And going into surgical menopause, I must just tell you, doing a process that is designed in the body to take from 3 to 7 years, doing that in 1 month is not fun. And anyone who undergoes surgical menopause or instant menopause like that, it really isn't fun. It's taught me a lot, and that's the reason why we're doing the talk tonight, but it really, really wasn't fun. And the emotional swings and the itchy skin, and then the mood swings, I turned into an absolute dragon. I mean, I called this Phoenix Rising and not Dragon Rising, but in the beginning, it's definitely Dragon Rising because it was impossible. I went through this period of time when I turned into someone who was not myself. I did not realize how much my hormones affected my personality and who I was and what I felt like. And so eventually I went on to the HRT, and the HRT didn't work. It had terrible, terrible side effects. So I had to get another prescription 6 weeks later, or 4 weeks later, or 5 weeks later, for less HRT. So I had to carry on undergoing the surgical menopause, which is fairly instant. And then, of course, when I went online and I looked for help and advice, everyone had a different level of advice that they wanted to give me. So as you can see on this meme, on this slide, I started incorporating, or trying to incorporate, the feedback from everyone online. So there were people saying, you must do it all naturally. You mustn't take HRT. It's terrible for you. You're going to get cancer and die. And then there were people saying, the mood swings are awful, but you must take this or take that. And then the doctor was saying, don't take the HRT with the CBD oil or with something else, because then that's going to affect the medication. So this first meme made me laugh, because that's how I felt when I was first undergoing this surgical menopause, was I had to incorporate all the feedback from every critique. And I ended up with this pizza that was just everyone else's ideas of what this process should look like for me. And then, of course, I lost my libido. And this was really, really frightening for me, because I had my sexual awakening at the age of 40 and had moved into a space where I had traveled on a tantric journey and a yoga journey and a spiritual awakening, which had included the energy of the root chakra. And I had designed a whole business around intimacy and pleasure and teaching people in a way that was very boundaried and safe. And now suddenly my libido had gone. There was, in fact, I would sit in front of my husband and I would cry, because I would say, I am scared that I am never going to want to have sex ever again, because the way I feel right now, I don't think sex is part of my future. I don't think intimacy is part of my future. And it's not just because my body is recovering from surgery. Everything in me switched off when it came to any sort of libido or sexual energy at all. And this was terrifying, because to be authentic in my industry, I need to have a level of intimacy and a level of pleasure and a level of connection with my husband. So I said to him, you may have to find someone else, and maybe we'll just have to, get your needs met elsewhere, because I don't feel like we're ever going to have sex again. And I would just spend hours and hours crying and mood swinging and being up and down. And it was absolutely impossible. And all of the tools that I already had for intimacy and libido, I couldn't use them, because there was no libido. There was nothing. And chemically, I was all over the place. So in a sense, I had to start from scratch and move into regulating my nervous system, because that's the only thing I could regulate, because my chemicals were so all over the place because of the surgery and because of the HRT that I eventually started to take. It started to help me get back on top of things so my body could adjust to having less estrogen. But unfortunately, it's not overnight. These things take months and months. Again, menopause is meant to be a 3 to 7 year process, and you're not meant to do it in a month. If I'd had this surgery years and years ago, well, you couldn't have it years and years ago, but 100 years ago, I would have just died. It would have been quite simple. It would have been the end. But being able to have this surgery and then being able to move into a full and happy life afterwards is quite difficult, because the doctors don't tell you a lot of what's happening in your body, and they just expect you to just get over it and be on the other side of it, which is just not true. So the only thing I had control over was my nervous system. So I had to go back to the very beginning of the work that I did, which with intimacy and pleasure. And part of the first work that I teach with intimacy and pleasure and the sexual awakening and the root chakra is with regulation of the nervous system and polyvagal toning. Now, this is a big buzzword in a lot of the industries today, a lot of the healing industries, a lot of the holistic spaces, and a lot of the yoga spaces, because it also helps with trauma. But I had to start to co-regulate in a way that I couldn't even get out of bed enough to do some yoga breathing. I would get out of bed and sit cross-legged for about 5 minutes and start to cry, because I couldn't even do pranayama. I couldn't even do some basic breathing and some spinal flexors. I was in too much pain, and it was just too much for me. So I had to go right back to basics and go and look at vagus nerve work and vagus activation, polyvagal theory. And this all links up with going through the trauma of surgery and toning the vagus nerve. Now, doctors actually do have a machine they give you, they can give you for toning the vagus nerve, which is a little like vibration machine that works on the vagus nerve in the neck, which helps with bringing this wandering nerve back into control over your system. Because if you look at what the vagus nerve does, it's connected to everything, but very little is known about it. They know how to activate it and they know what it contributes to. The polyvagal theory is quite interesting because you can go into dorsal collapse when you've been through enough trauma. And this means that it doesn't matter what your mindset looks like. It doesn't matter how many tools you've got. It doesn't matter how many years of yoga you've done. It doesn't matter how holistically healthy you are or how nutritionally viable your diet is. When your vagus nerve is not working correctly or has been traumatized or you're in survival mode, a lot of these things just switch off because your body wants to keep you alive. So it will not let you be in the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the system you need to be in to heal from trauma, from surgery, from menopause, and start accessing your chakras and your balance and your energy and all of those things again. So you can see the vagus nerve is attached to almost everything. And it contributes to a lot of things that your body does automatically. It controls your heart rate. It decreases inflammation. So obviously for healing, having good vagal toning is essential. It allows your gut and brain to communicate. And a lot of your intuition comes from your vagus nerve. And it helps you relax and stay calm. So it's easier to deal with stress or anxiety. And the interesting thing to me was when I came out of surgery was that's when everyone wants to visit you, or everybody wants to get you back online after 2 or 3 weeks, or they want to phone you. And you get very little rest time because you're actually being socially activated all the time to take part in getting back on top of looking after your family or doing all the things around the house that you would normally do as a woman, etc., etc. So it was quite fascinating to see how little rest you get after such a major trauma, especially with surgery. It wouldn't have to be a hysterectomy. It could be any sort of surgery. So that was just something I noted as well. So I started putting together this vagus nerve work and this parasympathetic nervous system work, which I already had from doing the intimacy and bliss and relaxation work that I'd already been doing. And I started putting together something that I called Bliss Class. And the reason I designed this was because I could do it lying down. So I took the activation points. I took vagus nerve activations. I took all of the nerve bundles, the acupressure points, the things that I needed to do. And I started putting it together in something I named Bliss Class and teaching it, which would co-regulate the nervous system, start to tone the vagus nerve, could be done lying down. And what happened is the first couple of times I started doing this class, I would write down what I wanted to do. I'd be lying in bed, write down what I wanted to do. I would get to about the third or fourth move and I'd fall asleep. So obviously I was sending a direct message to my parasympathetic nervous system and also to my vagus nerve that I was safe and that I could heal. So I was doing something somatic, something with the body that was actually giving a body hack and a direct message to the nervous system that couldn't be done with my mind. And this made me think about what happens with the cycles of life. We don't respect the cycles of life generally. We are on the go, especially if we're a solo entrepreneur. So what do they call them? Solopreneurs or something. You know, I can spell it, but I can't say it. Or if you are a gig economy worker. I was a singer for many years. So I understand what it is to, if you don't work, you don't eat. So there's the stress that happens in the body because of that as well, especially when you hit a rough bump. And menopause is a very rough bump in the body. Puberty and menopause and childbirth are the three places in a woman's life, someone who possesses a womb and works with a womb and works mainly with estrogen, that we need the most support and are the most difficult. And these are the times when also we often receive the most fear, shame, and guilt about puberty, about coming into our sexual energy and our sexual power, curiosity around sexuality, etc. A lot of that is not discussed. Then when we give birth, everyone else has got advice on how to do it, but a lot of them did it many, many years ago, and things change and new ways of doing things are envisioned. And so childbirth and giving birth for women sometimes does bring up again a lot of fear, shame, and guilt. I had an emergency cesarean. I thought, oh, my body's not working. So I was very angry with my body and fearful about that. And now moving into menopause, again, there's so little support. All of the support seems to be how to look younger, how to take supplements to look younger, how to be younger all the time. It's devised around trying to make you want to stay young instead of walking into your power of where you actually are in your life. And there's this winter season that happens with this fire of the hot flushes. Your body temperature starts to re-regulate and things need to move around in your endocrine system to move you into lifting away the veil of estrogen, which we're going to talk about in a moment. So when you start doing this vagus nerve work and you're going back to basics and you're rebuilding your foundation in your body, it can bring up a lot of shadows and a lot of fear, shame, and guilt, because the root energy in the body, or the life force energy in the body, is deeply linked to sexual energy. But this is a time in a woman's life where sexual energy is not based around being a sexual consumable anymore. We can choose to stay sexually consumable in the sense that we're going to be seen by people who consider us as a sexual commodity, or for someone that can run a sexual agenda by the way we appear to be or by our fertility, etc. But this is the time in life when we can start moving away from that. The veil of estrogen is something that was absolutely mind-blowing when I started to realize how deeply estrogen and the veil of estrogen runs in our lives. So I want to tell you a story at this point, because when our cat was pregnant, she's not a very affectionate cat. Her name is Scratch, and for a reason. She mainly scratches. But she's not a very affectionate cat. And when she fell pregnant and had kittens, for 8 weeks to the day, she was the most loving, purring, wonderful little kitty cat. You could have put anyone to feed. You could have just snuck a puppy in there. In fact, I've seen that happening on YouTube videos. You can get ducklings to suckle on nursing mothers when they're cats. The rest of the time, no, they'll eat it. That's their prey. But during their nursing time, the chemicals that are running through that cat's body are so intense that cat is so loving and so compassionate towards her young that she will feed and nurture almost anything in front of her, from human through to duckling, through to kitten, through to puppy. You can take kittens from other litters and put them with a nursing mother, and most of the time, I'm not going to say all of the time, but most of the time, that nursing cat mother will accept a brand new kitten because of the chemicals that are flowing at the time. Now, we need the veil of estrogen as we are in the world as women, if we choose to have children, if we choose to be partnered, because otherwise, truly, I think we would eat our young. That sounds terrible, but if we didn't have estrogen, how the heck would we manage to do childbearing and looking after children and even want to have another child once we'd had one? And looking at our partners as sometimes partners, especially if they are of the male testosterone variety, they can sometimes be in need of a lot of nurturing and care as well, and can sometimes feel like an extra child. So we need estrogen for a certain amount of our life so that we are capable of working with this deep compassion that estrogen brings up. When the veil of estrogen lifts during menopause, everyone accuses women of being grumpy, of being frumpy, of not being interested in sexuality anymore, etc. But actually, all of these things are happening for a reason. It's so you can walk into your power. Because if you still had the same levels of estrogen moving into menopause, you would not be able to become matriarchal in your power. You would not be able to step back from this, what the Taoists call stupid compassion. You would not be able to step back and make decisions for yourself and for your community and for your tribe, because you would be still within the veil of estrogen. So it's this over compassionate, over nurturing, over loving, which is important when you're in the fertility phase. As we move out of fertility phase, our sexual energy also changes, because it's not based on fertility anymore or bearing young. This does tend to happen for women around the age of 35 when they have their sexual awakening or can have a sexual awakening. Suddenly the libido can flare, and the understanding of sexual energy and pleasure can be felt very differently in the body, because the body's not geared so much towards reproducing. I'm talking about estrogen-based bodies, not geared so much towards reproducing. So what happens when we start going through menopause? We start cutting off from things that are sapping our energy and not bringing our energy back to ourselves. A lot of people are accused of being quite selfish as they walk into the menopause years. Women often do get divorced during menopause because they suddenly have decided they're not going to be looking after large children anymore. And if their partner hasn't grown with them spiritually or on a self-development growth path, they may not be willing to look after a partner anymore either. If the partner is quite has got a lot of childish ways about them, or it needs a lot of caretaking, etc. So women sometimes become quite reluctant to remarry or to partner into and past menopause, because now the veil of estrogen has been lifted and wisdom begins to arise. And self-centeredness begins to arise in the way that we can start centering ourselves on ourselves instead of on our partners and our children and the rest of the things that estrogen asks of us. I'm not going to say that estrogen is totally responsible for my personality, but let me tell you from my own anecdotal evidence, when I had no estrogen in my system, I was not pleasant. And I think that is not just because there was no estrogen. I think that's because estrogen softens us. It softens our skin. It softens our nature. It makes us far more compassionate. And having that lifted away completely and stripped almost made me neutral. I was not a testosterone being and I was not an estrogen being. I was neutral, but I was also in a lot of trauma around the surgery and a lot of pain. So I think it made me completely unpleasant. But estrogen does have impact on our personality. I worked with a transgender client once, and when she was testosterone driven, as her biological body was, she said she felt emotions in black and white. When she was on estrogen, she felt emotions in full color. And I do believe that those hormones do differentiate us as human beings and human bodies. Because when that cat got 8 weeks in, she kicked those kids out of the nest, would not go near any of them. And they would keep coming up to her, nuzzling and nuzzling. They do to this day. We still have 4 of those cats. We've got 3 of the babies and the 1 mommy. And they go to her regularly and they try and nuzzle and get in there because she still smells like mommy. And she maybe sometimes will lick them twice and cuff them and send them on their merry way. She is not interested because those hormones have stopped. So this is where I say we have to respect our mammal. Regardless of our spiritual paths, regardless of our belief systems, we have to respect that we are also mammals and animals. And so as we move into menopause, there is a reintroduction of what we need to do within our nervous system and within our body to support ourselves as we're moving into this place where we can start creating again. This quote on the side is something that I found so important, because when I went through my sexual awakening, I realized the amount of shame there is around the sexual energy in the female form. It's like the male fantasy often is to have a sexually empowered woman, but it's also his greatest fear, because of all the female sins, hunger is the least forgivable. Hunger for anything, for food, for sex, for power, education, or even love. If we have desires, we are expected to conceal them, to control them, to keep ourselves in check. We are supposed to be objects of desire, not desiring beings. And I believe that when the veil of estrogen lifts, we have the chance to start working with the root chakra and the sexual energy again and differently. So I just want to look at my notes quickly as well. This is the sense of the sage, and moving into the magic becomes possible. So I started working with this Bliss Class and with this Vegas retoning and the rest of it. And eventually, week by week, I then added in some HRT, but a lot less, because I do believe in a both and approach. So I was willing to add in a little bit of estrogen so that I could just stay on top of things. Because again, I've done this in a month instead of over 3 to 7 years. And it was the lowest dose estrogen I could take. And eventually I will move off of that and onto a natural estrogen replacement, or the herbs and things that can go with that. I don't want to combine. I'm moving from one into the other because that's what's keeping me sane. And also, I do believe in medicine. I went onto an SSRI, a serotonin reuptake inhibitor, which also affected my libido, but in a very interesting way because of the use of serotonin with the reuptake inhibitor. So it was a very interesting learning around that. And I'm also busy moving myself off of that now. I personally believe in a both and approach, because every support group that I'd gone onto on Facebook, it was an either or approach. It was like, HRT is wonderful, you must do HRT, or don't touch it, it's the devil, it's from the devil, and you must just do it naturally. But very few people were talking about a both and approach and saying, do what works for you. So this isn't really a talk on what you can do to get past menopause or through it in the easiest way. It's talking about the power that starts coming from the creative energy that can arise after the process of menopause is starting to reach completion. So that would take most people a lot longer, and it was fairly quick for me. So I want to talk about the power. So sexual energy in the body, we shame it a lot as women. We are very afraid of desire. We're very afraid of sexual energy. But sexual energy is just an energy. It can be used for sexuality and what I call the fire of Eros. Do you have the Wheel of Intimacy? Mm-hmm. I want to show you this on the Wheel of Intimacy. So it can be used for libido and sexuality, but that is just one doorway. So when we're talking about the nervous systems and different ways of looking at things, you can see here from the Wheel of Intimacy, this is what I've designed, but it makes sense anyway. The sympathetic nervous system does certain things, and most of us throughout our lives are very used to what's on the contractive side there. So you can see just below the sympathetic nervous system is the contractive experiences. So we used to friction-based orgasm. We used to tipping into orgasm, so contractive orgasms. We used to emotional identification and physical practice being what our sexuality is about. Kegel exercises, contracting into, and we used to fear being in some of the contractive experiences as well as being a lot of adrenaline. When you start working with Neo-Tantra work and with the sensual wellness work, you start moving on to the expansive side. And this is where you start discovering that sexual energy is just an energy, and it is also the energy of creativity. So often when you start feeling that sexual energy flowing through the body, you start feeling incredible amounts of creativity. My husband, we've been together for 28 years. We've been to heaven and hell together. So after I was on my knees, basically saying to him, I never want to have sex ever again. Please leave me alone. Don't touch me. I started doing this vagus nerve work and realizing as well with my research that when you start to move into the parasympathetic nervous system and the vagus nerve activation work and getting everything up and running again from the foundation of the nervous system, you stop hermiting. And you are less resistant to touch, and so therefore more receptive of oxytocin. It is, again, a survival technique that your body uses to push people away. So that includes intimacy and includes sexuality. So, of course, if we're not having this expansive sexual energy, we're not going to have creativity in our body, and we're going to tend to be in survival mode. So that's the reason why I wanted to put this Wheel of Intimacy in front of you, is to say, if you've experienced most of your life having sexuality and intimacy as being very contractive, friction-based experiences, and you haven't necessarily had an energy orgasm or moved into moving that energy through the body and feeling it through the heart, or even moving it into the higher chakras, this may feel very woo-woo for a lot of people. I do apologize if it's not part of your belief system, but I have experienced these things in my body. I've experienced a 2-hour orgasm. It's no longer a sexual thing. It is an energy flow and an opening up of what's possible in the body. And I do believe that's also because of the chemicals that it releases. So when you're getting plenty of oxytocin and serotonin and an amount of dopamine, not too much, because it can be an overwhelming and addictive substance. When you start reaching this balance again in the nervous system, creativity becomes possible. So I started doing this Bliss Class for myself. I started doing the vagus nerve work. I got onto a little bit of HRT, and I started taking an antidepressant, which did reduce my libido. However, I then started doing the disciplined pleasure practices of Neo-Tantra with my husband, and everything woke up again. It was different because of the SSRI. The feelings was definitely more in the expansive states and the yin states as opposed to the yang states. But we had this incredible experience where we slowed down and we moved into lovemaking differently again after 28 years, which really took me by surprise because I thought we'd had all the experiences we were going to have. I was like this expert, like we knew what we were doing, we knew about pleasure. And then all of a sudden this different energy began to arise, and it was slow and it was profound and it was wise, and it started moving up my body, and it kept me awake sometimes. And I would be writing poetry throughout the night. I'd be thinking of music. I'd have ideas. This creative energy began to burn. And so instead of this energy just being about fertility, reproduction, partnership, and family, I had changed and moved out of this winter fire where everything had shut down, and recognized this season of my life, this deep rest, depressed, deep rest. It was only when I got into the deep rest of acknowledging my nervous system differently and doing the deep work, foundational work to restructure my nervous system, that I could start to build upon this foundation and start to rediscover this energy. And this energy was different. So it becomes this wise energy and this powerful energy that is accessible to you, that is very linked to creativity. And it becomes a time in your life where you can start birthing different things. You can start birthing a different business. You could start birthing a different life for yourself. You could start birthing any sort of creative project. The most amazing creative project that has just come through for me is a project that Tim and I have developed called Sensorium, which we did at the Teach Your Gift retreat recently at Highcroft. And it is a conscious touch nervous system work combined with sampled sounds, binaural beats and frequencies that just came together in my head because I tapped into this energy. And so this energy wasn't anymore about the energy given out to others as a sexual consumable or for my own sexual fire energy. It became creative energy. And I think this is what is hidden from women. We are sold, stay young. And I'm not saying don't look good. Of course, I've got my Zoom filters on, that touch up my face, and I put makeup on for this call, and I want to look good. We did something earlier when I had no makeup on. The camera angle was wrong, and I looked at myself and thought, "Wow, hideous," And I think that that's built in. I think we want to look good, but I think that this aiming towards youth and the things of youth and the energy of youth is taking us away from our power. And I think that the community and the world at large does that deliberately. I don't think the world wants you to know how powerful you are as an older woman. They don't want you to tap into that power. They want to keep you scared and keep you running and worried about your health and worried about your partnership and worried about your libido and worried about the way you look and worried about wrinkles and worried about Botox and worried about all of those things, because those things are sexual consumables. So what happens at this age as well is you get the superpower. And this superpower is called the cloak of invisibility. It means that as you walk through the world, you can be invisible to the people who are takers and the people who have no further use for you. You are invisible to them. They are not going to be using you anymore. In some circumstances, yes. If you've got a heck of a lot of money and they know it and you like toy boys, you could run into a problem. But this cloak of invisibility is a superpower because it can keep you on this path towards creation and wisdom that can open up for you without wasting your time and energy on the frivolous things of youth. You have passed that now. It's not that you can't go back and tap in every now and again. Of course you can. You can do anything you like as an older woman. But you can walk into this power and this invisibility that you can use as a cloak to do the things in the world and own the power in the world that is yours by divine right. And I think we are lied to, and we're not told about how to tap into this power. So women in their 40s and their 50s and their 60s and their 70s have the chance to develop this energy and work on this creativity, as well as this deep sensuality and sensualness in their lives. It hasn't gone. It's just alchemized. It's taken a slightly different take on it, but it's pretty wonderful, I've got to say. You know, in the beginning of this journey, just after the operation, I thought, that's it. My life is over. I've built this whole business and on pleasure and intimacy. Now what? And I had to go back to the basics, and the basics still work. And there are ways around moving into menopause to find your wisdom and your power. And also when women are older, according to nature, there is no reason for women to live longer than men do and to live past menopause, because for a lot of animals, once we are no longer fertile, we die because our selfish gene has said, that's it, our purpose is done. So the fact that we don't die and we can walk into more of wisdom, more power, and more sexual energy is actually very interesting to me, because that means that is what is that's the design. Things in nature work in balance, and that's the design, is for us to walk into our power. So if you are staying hidden from your power and no one is telling you this and no one is teaching you how to move into your power, you're going to end up just fading away. And you have the chance to become the wise woman and to become this powerful person in your community and within your tribe and within your family. And so I want to encourage you to walk into your wisdom and to walk into the next part of the path and to endure the fire and emerge from the ashes of your hot flashes. I want to tell you one more story about wisdom and compassion, because I think this anecdotally works incredibly well. You can do the next. And it's a story that says, if you see a snake on the floor and it's injured and it's very sad and it needs love, if you pick it up and cuddle it, you are showing what is known as stupid compassion. Because you need to show compassion to the snake in a way the snake can understand it. So you cannot treat a snake the same way you treat a kitten. A kitten you could pick up and cuddle. A snake needs to go to a snake expert, and you need to keep it at arm's length. Now, what happens with stupid compassion, and sometimes with the veil of estrogen, is we treat everything, we welcome it in. And now it's time to refine our energy and decide how we want to build a foundation for the rest of our lives, to move into our creativity, to move into that energy that is called sexual energy. But that's so frustrating to me, because often when you say sexual energy, people think it means the energy you have when you are having sex. It isn't that. Perhaps some people understand it better as life force energy. Your life force energy has now got the chance to be used with wisdom and compassion in equal parts and in balance. So it is not a bad thing that you're getting a little bit grumpy and that you're having a couple of hot flashes and that your nervous system is trying to rebalance itself. There are ways to make this the best season ever. And I've got to say, I'm so grateful now that I did it quickly, because I didn't have to wait 7 years. I wouldn't advise anyone having a hysterectomy going into surgical menopause. Don't think it's just a shortcut so that you can go and have your womb whipped out and everything will be wonderful. I think that nature's plan is better plan necessarily than a surgical plan. Sometimes modern medicine is a bit like a sledgehammer. It gets the job done when you need to take a wall out, but the rest of it is fine tuning and decor, so we don't want to take a sledgehammer to absolutely everything. We want to fine tune. And the path that you will find for yourself will be slightly different to mine. But the things around the nervous system stay the same, whether you are testosterone heavy, estrogen heavy, whether you've been through trauma, whether you haven't. The things around the nervous system remain the same. They work because the human body works in that way. So have we seen was that the last slide? Have we seen the last slide? Okay, fantastic. So now what I'd like to do Oh yes, no, that's the last slide. Can we see the last slide now, please? Technical wonder wizard. Did we see it already? Oh, okay. All right. I was so busy talking, I forgot it. I was just talking about the invisibility cloak. And then also Arthur C. Clarke said, this is moving into the magic. And a lot of this talk, for me, I struggle with it because I struggle with the woo-woo stuff, believe it or not. I actually do struggle with the woo-woo stuff. And I'm now welcoming the magic back in, because a lot of the woo-woo stuff, when you actually go and research it, it's got to do with chemicals. It's got to do with conscious touch. It's got to do with um, energy in the body and understanding body language. So any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And sometimes that happens as well. Some of the things I say to my coaches is, this is magic. I can't explain it yet. But there are things I can explain now that 10 years ago I couldn't explain. When I was teaching all of the nervous system work and the parasympathetic nervous system work 10 years ago, no one else was talking about it. And now they are, because it isn't magic. You actually do know how the trick works, but it's nice to move into the magic and say, I have this magic cloak of invisibility. I have these magical powers, because you do. It is magic to a lot of people out there who don't know how you're doing it or don't know how you're creating it. So they've known for a long time that magic and technology and all of these woo-woo things, it all lives in very similar spaces. Yes, have a good dose of logic and have a good dose of, what they say, don't open your mind so much that your heart falls out. Be sensible about what you believe and what you are willing to buy into. But these techniques are so brilliant for libido and for healing the inner teenager and sexual awakening. Most of us never went through a sexual awakening when we were a teenager, the first level of puberty, with anything other than fear, guilt, and shame. And it's time now, we're grown-ups. It's time to heal that inner child and the inner teenager and move into our sexual awakening, in the sense that we are awakening that energy in our bodies. And we are willing to start alchemizing that energy into different areas of our life that we can utilize this life force energy for, because a lot of us just don't use it. We shut it down. We shut down life force energy completely. And it doesn't mean having more sex, unless you want to have more sex, in which case, please go ahead. But sexual energy is not about having sex. It's about the energy in the body. So it's about moving into the magic. And also remember that no one size fits all. It's a both and approach. And I ask you again to take what resonates and release the rest. Not everything I've said tonight is going to resonate with you, and that's absolutely okay. I do believe that all of us have individual parts, but there are things here that can help people. So I'd like to do an exercise with you now that's actually practical. We're going to do a little bit of a vagus nerve exercise to start feeling how this release starts to work in the body. I'm going to start it with a breathing technique that's very, very simple. All I want you to do is to breathe in through your nose, breathe out through your mouth, and sigh out the breath. With a slight vocalization. The reason for making a noise when you breathe out is because it activates the vagus nerve. Humming, chanting, singing do the same thing. So you could sing that note out if that feels more comfortable for you, or you could hum that note out, or you can just, if you're feeling shy and there are other people in the house that might hear you, you can just make a bit of a breath that's a sigh. So you're breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth, which down regulates the nervous system. Now, that's all I want you to do while you listen to this piece of poetry from Sensorium that I wrote after I came into my Phoenix Rising. And then we're going to move into some other exercises. So you're welcome to close your eyes, and you're welcome to, you're going to have to tell me. I can't read signals. Okay, I don't know. So you're welcome to close your eyes and to breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth, and making a noise just while we're listening to the poetry. And then after that, I'm going to guide you through the other vagus nerve exercises.
She calls you into the dance of pleasure and creation. She calls you into the joy and laughter of it all. She calls you into the oneness of being, into the life force within. She calls you into the connection with your truth and vision, She calls you into green things growing, all appreciation, nurturing and nourishing your soul. You are never alone. You are never alone.
Now what I want you to do is to carry on breathing in that way, in through the nose and out through the mouth. And close your eyes if you want to. You can just watch me if you need to. And you're going to start with your thumbs and your first fingers, just gently making little circles on the cartilage of the ears. Slowly, slowly, slowly. So make 3 little circles. Remember to breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Oh. When you've made about 3 little circles, move down about 1 centimeter and then make 3 more little circles. If you've got earphones in, you might want to even just take them out for this bit or just leave one in and do one ear at a time. But you're just going to move around the whole shell of the ear. And I want you to create a little bit of heat underneath your fingers and right down into the earlobe. Oh, made my earpod fall out now. The practicalities. And then start again at the top. So I want you to do the whole shell of the ear about 3 times. And when you've done that, we'll move on to the next part. Remember to breathe. Oh. Should be round about doing your 3rd ear massage now. Then stay on the earlobes a little bit longer. This is called watering the flowers. And it's a Taoist move to start the energy. It's on the kidney meridian. Get a little bit of heat going there. Remember to breathe. Remember to sigh out the air. And now you've probably done that 3 times. Now what I'd like you to do is move to this little part of your ear. This is called the auricle. And what I want you to do, auricle not as in O-R-A, but as in A-U-R-I-C-L-E, is to take your finger and your thumb and to just start to massage that on both sides if you can, or swap your headphones if you need to. Just massaging that deeply, remembering to breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth. Good. Now what I want you to do is to carry on breathing as deeply as you can, still sighing the breath out. Turn your head to one side and I want you to find this muscle body just below your earlobe. It sort of stands out. You should be able to feel it. As soon as you found it, keep your head turned and take the knuckle of your index finger and your thumb and start to massage down. Again, do about 3 to 6 circles. And not too hard. Be gentle with yourself here. This is very vulnerable. And then move down about 1 centimeter or so and then massage again. Remember to breathe. When you get down to the bottom, just above your collarbone, go back up to the top, so that you're massaging this entire structure 3 times. And by the way, it's quite normal for some people to feel a little bit emotional as they're massaging here. It's directly activating the vagus nerve. So if you do feel a little bit of emotion or tears or anything, just allow it and let it pass right through. And once you've done that whole structure about 3 times, take your fingers and very gently just wipe down that entire structure into the collarbone. Keep stroking. And gently, you don't want to be damaging the skin, just stroking gently. Alrighty, now we're going to turn the head to the other side and find that structure again just below the earlobe and between that knuckle and the thumb. Just start with the circles. About 3 circles and then move down a centimeter. Remember to breathe, remember to vocalize on the exhale. Oh. Oh. And doing that 3 times, right from the top down to the bottom. If any of you suddenly feel a little bit sleepy or spacey, you're more than welcome to just lie down and listen to the rest of the call. Sometimes if you're quite stressed, something this simple can actually just make you fall asleep. Oh. If you have a favorite mantra or yoga chant, you can also use that. It activates the vocal cords. And then stroking down that entire body. Remember to breathe. Oh. And then I'd like you to find the point between your breasts where it's on top of your sternum. And quite firmly, just in line with your nipples, just make little circles on that bone. You might feel a little pain point there. You could even feel a little bit of an emotional release. It's very normal. Remember to breathe. Oh. And now we're going to open the mysterious passageway. This is a Taoist move from Taoist face massage. So just taking your 2 thumbs, like so, you're just going to wipe them. Remembering to breathe across your forehead and then release. And then last but not least, point between your eyebrows. I'd like you to just tap gently on it and continue to breathe deeply. Lightly drumming on this point. If anyone's wondering, that's my cat. just love the energy. As soon as I start doing this work, they all appear. You can have the best technology in the world and the cats in the house. All right, so stop tapping now and just hold that point and take 9 deep breaths. Focalizing on the out breath. Three more breaths. Last one, deep breath in. Fill your lungs as big as they can. Hold it a little bit extra and sigh it out. Just shake your hands a little bit and shake your body. All right, let me just find my glasses again because the cat just knocked over everything, including my notes. All righty. So that was just a little taste of some of the vagus nerve work and the nervous system preparation work we do within the Bliss work and within Bliss classes.